Hello, and welcome to the Gnostic Warrior radio show and podcast, broadcasting from GnosticWarrior.com in San Diego, California, to around the world. I'm your host, Mo, and today on the show, we have author and reverend for the Church of Satan, Corvis Nocturnum. His real name is E.R. Werner, and in this episode, we discuss the tenets of the Church of Satan, their beliefs, what they believe in, what they don't believe in, the dogmas of religion, and also some of his own personal views that he has on the world that we live in today. The purpose of having all these different religions and faiths on the Gnostic Warrior podcast is to give everybody the podium to tell their truths from a non-biased point of view. And that's my goal as the host of the Gnostic Warrior radio show and podcast, is to have a variety of subjects and guests that do just that. I hope you enjoy this podcast and you could understand where the Church of Satan now comes from. Welcome to the show today, Corvis. How you doing?
Not too bad. Thank you for having me on.
It's great to have you on the Gnostic Warrior radio show and podcast. Before we get into the great work that you're doing now, I know you're the author of several books. Can you please tell us a little bit about who you are and your background?
Well, I'm an author, publisher, and artist. I give lectures, and do some TV consultant work. I've helped out with a few episodes of Annie's Paranormal State. I was interviewed on the BET channel, The Lexi Show, on an episode called The Church of Satan. You know, I've done heavy into occult history, world history when it comes to anything to do with magic, occultism, vampires, zombies, basically the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery surrounding that. I know you're a reverend with the Church of Satan as well?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit about, before we get into your work, about the Church of Satan and your role there?
My role specifically for them, outside of the honorary title of Reverend within the church, is media representative, which basically means when the administration gets inquiries for television, radio, blog, etc., they usually try to put the majority of the Q&A off to reverends and magisters, which would be, the magister would be the title above a priest in most churches. I guess you would call it a bishop or deacon. But not all of the people of that rank are given the position of media representative. That just means that they're willing and able to clearly explain the fundamental philosophies of Anton LaVey's church.
Who is the head of the church right now?
The current high priest is Magus Peter H. Gilmore.
Can you tell us a little bit about the beliefs of the Church of Satan?
First of all, it really gets confused often with theistic Satanism, which is more like devil worship or inverted Christianity, whereas Satanism is more an atheistic philosophy. But we are considered technically a religion because we do have holidays, we do have the priesthood, we observe ritual self-worship, I guess you would say. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's more like self-help philosophy.
Yeah, and that's what I believe, Corvis, sorry to interrupt you there, that a lot of people that are outside of Satanism and they're, going with their day-to-day lives, they don't understand how it works in the core philosophies. And when you say that and you say it in such a simple way, I think of the self-made man, the guys that get tattoos self-made and, they're going to forge their paths ahead for them because we're, living in the society where essentially everybody's out for themselves and it's survival of the fittest, but opposed to us killing each other and taking each other's stuff, which of course is happening on the larger levels with the powers that be. On the lower levels, we're kind of forced into this man-made reality where we got to make money and we got to do these different things in order to survive. And when I look at the tenets of Satanism and, the self-made man, it's almost perfect for this type of society.
I do believe so. I mean, we certainly have changed and evolved to where it is survival of the fittest. I personally believe that's the way humanity always has been, from the earliest cavemen who were strong enough to endure the weather and animals, all the way up to our social Darwinism now, where, the intelligent are the truly strong people. The ones who are determined, creative, and willing to dig in and do the hard work and do everything that they possibly can. I mean, of course, we like money. We're an Epicurean branch of hate to say that we're an institutionalized religion because we don't have the dogma that, the Judeo-Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, paths have, but we certainly do have our list of satanic sins to avoid, such as stupidity and being rude in public to people that don't deserve it, and things like that. We just feel that it's a very pragmatic way of looking at the reality of life and how we fit in the social contact with other people.
When I look around the world today, I see many people who appear to be walking blindly. Some claim that they're Christians and, they're men and women of God. But in doing so, many of these same people seem to be walking the left-hand path. And my understanding is the Church of Satan, even though you guys don't talk about it too much, but it's really a left-hand path, which would be kind of the self, I'm going to forge my own path ahead of me, as opposed to in the other religions where you're supposed to serve God and put God and your neighbor before yourself. I see a lot of hypocrisy in these people, meaning that they say they're a member of a religion, they serve God, and they love their neighbor more than themselves, but they're actually doing the complete opposite. They're almost members of the Church of Satan without being members.
I think, we call them de facto Satanists. People like Nietzsche, Ayn Rand, Thomas Paine. There's been many people that were described as humanists, what we consider them more jokingly atheists, because we are ego-affirming. This is a groundbreaking attitude for most people back in the 60s and 70s when this came about, because Anton LaVey came along in 66, he basically took concepts of these other authors and speakers, and he said that it's a formula of 9-part social responsibility, and the rest is outrage, matching the concepts of what a church is supposed to be. It's a temple of indulgence and defying people that say you need to have abstinence. We're not gluttons. We are very much responsible, rational people. It's the idea that you can be an elitist and you can be an Epicurean, which means you enjoy and desire the finer things in life and you push yourself to be able to reach those goals. I think the Church of Satan is one of the most fantastic self-help programs in the world because you look in the mirror and you are squarely faced with the reality that if your life is terrible, it's only partially your surroundings' fault. It's not society. It's not government. It's not how your parents raised you. Yes, coming from a better background, having a better opportunities, those enhance the qualities that you may already have. But if you had nothing, you can still become powerful, successful, happy, confident, and all these other things.
Your beliefs and your tenets seem such like common sense. I understand why a lot of people are, of course, a member of the Church of Satan. You had mentioned Anton LaVey, who is the founder of the Church of Satan. Can you explain a little bit to the audience who he was and how he had formed the church?
Well, he was around during the 1950s, 1960s. He became the world's most recognized Satanist in history, writing the Satanic Bible in April '66. He shaved his head, and in the tradition of ancient executioners, he announced to the world that he wanted to create a church that would recapture man's carnal desires and celebrate intelligence and personal drive. He got a lot of flack from other churches, of course, and they said he was blasphemous, calling himself, a church, and he never once said he was the Black Pope. That was a moniker other people gave him. He said Satanism is a conscious alternative to herd mentality and institutionalized thought. He wanted to liberate individuals from the mindless, if I can quote to David Thoreau, the author from years ago, he said people live lives of quiet desperation. You plod through your life having a job you hate, screaming kids, and there's a better life out there for you. You can be a better parent. You can be a better provider. You have to find something that is personally fulfilling for you. I'll never forget an interview I saw with Gene Simmons of KISS, where he basically was being blasted for being self-serving, and he said, well, I'm worth $300 million and I've slept with 10,000 women. People all over the world know my name. And, if he isn't one of our members, and we don't know, only the Magus knows the entire roster of who's who, he certainly qualifies in the philosophical outlook of life of, he came over here with nothing. He could barely speak the language. What's the excuse of everybody else here who does have opportunities, who has family, who has money, and they do nothing with their lives?
Yeah, it's true. And if you look at I know you were interviewed by BET and, of course, other publications out there. And, you know, a lot of the people involved in the music industry and entertainment, they kind of have the same tenets and philosophy that you'll find in the Church of Satan. And as you mentioned right now, this is not a public roster. So there could be several high-profile people in the media or in entertainment industry that are members of the Church of Satan, but we wouldn't know it unless they, of course, came out and said that, right?
Definitely. I mean, everybody from King Diamond and Marilyn Manson were reverends within the Church of Satan. You know, Sammy Davis Jr. was a member and rose to the priesthood back in the 60s and 70s. That was, you know, very scandalous. But, you know, the Rat Pack, you know, they were all about attention and partying and living the good life. You know, we're all about celebrating man's natural talents, whatever you're good at, whatever you enjoy. Utilize it to the fullest. You know, but like you said, for some people, the military, law enforcement, judges, doctors, you know, all of that. The devil's advocate with Al Pacino, you know, law is a prime example of Satanism. It's lex talionis, which is kind of let the punishment fit the crime. You know, some of our members may even be prosecutors in your own hometown because they believe in justice that's harsh and swift. I mean, we're not baby-killing, animal-sacrificing monsters that go to rock and roll concerts and, you know, throw up the horns. Most of us are in suits and ties.
These stories that we hear out there, you know, in media, you know, since the 1980s, I know there was the panic of Church of Satan, or the Satanic Panic, which I believe, of course, centered around Anton LaVey forming the church and the media attention that he had about it. There have been several incidents where self-proclaimed, you know, devil worshippers or Satanists had actually sacrificed animals, and some have sacrificed humans. Your beliefs and your tenets as the, you know, speaking from the Church of Satan, do you guys condemn this behavior, or is it, you know, that's their path and they chose that?
That's what the individuals, you know, chose to do if there were any reported cases of such abuse. And to the best of my knowledge, there was only a few cases, and they weren't connected to us at all.
Okay, so they claim to be, you know, hey, I worship the devil or I worship Satan, but they technically weren't members of the church.
Oh, no, of course not. I mean, even the FBI came out and directly stated that no member of the Church of Satan has ever been accused of a crime, let alone convicted. And I spoke to retired agent Kenneth Lanning, and he's the one who wrote the SRA reports for the FBI. He was a field agent, psychoanalyst. He was very much involved in the Michelle Remembers book that came out, and he said I sat in on that interview, and it was a total joke. He was very upset, and the more research he did into it, and he was a very devout Catholic, too, keep in mind, and he would yell at the other local police officers when he went to investigate crime scenes that they were attributing to the satanic ritual abuse, or SRA panic, as it was called in the 80s. He would say, you know, you have no more right to look at an altar in anybody's house, whether they're pagan or a Satanist, and say, well, there's an indicator that they're a criminal. He says that's no more alike as a point of evidence than saying that a crucifix of a Catholic hanging on the wall makes them, you know, a child molester because some priests do it. He was paramount to helping change the public mindset to counter the damage that people like Geraldo and stereotypical Hollywood movies and television shows. And, you know, we still have that damage out there. Not everybody's making films that portray us in a positive light because, you know, there's no money in that. That's exactly why there were so-called experts from the 60s all the way up until even now, going around even on YouTube or trotting out books and trying to sucker police officers and whole departments to pay them small fortune in telling them what Satanists really were. And, you know, it's rather despicable when you ask me that things like this continue. I mean, we're not a cult. We are just as powerful and prominent in our own morality as the moral majority of people that go to church. You know, we're just more open about it when we do things than other people. I mean, we admit that church and ritual is nothing more than a dog and pony show, whether it's theater or psychology, you know, because we're building that emotion in, as much as children play act when they're trying to create a feeling. I mean, we use that in ritual, so therefore it becomes larger than life in our minds, and that's how we focus on our own drive and personal push. We're not lunatics by any means. I mean, you could point fingers at other religions who handle snakes, things like that. So I consider us the most irrational group of human beings in the world. It's not to say that we don't have members occasionally that misbehave or come into it with the wrong intentions and want to be abusive, and they quickly get sorted out and given the boot.
Yeah, let me add also, Corvis, that I know ritual abuse and sacrifice has been happening and has been documented even in the Bible by the Israelites, in the Judaic religion for thousands of years. So this can't all be attributed to the Church of Satan or your organization. This has been going on, and you could find countless stories of this in every history book in the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's ironic that the Satanists are the ones who get accused of devil worship and sacrifice, when traditionally it was the Druids who would burn animals during the Burning Man ceremonies, and other religions. I mean, the goat was hurled off the cliff by the Jewish people because they felt that, there was the sheep and then there was the goat, and the goat carried the sins of man. And, this poor helpless animal was going crashing down a cliff until it shattered at the bottom. And this was fine and dandy, not to, by any means, be anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, anti-Buddhist. I have friends of every religion out there. I'm friends with Father Bob Bailey out of Pawtucket, Rhode Island, who was involved in paranormal states, and we did the World Religion panel. I'm doing another one at Convocation next March for one of the largest pagan Midwest gatherings. I've been a repeated guest there. They treat me fine. So I don't feel that there is a major schism between my belief system and those that aren't the left-hand path. But of course, you're always going to catch flack from mainstream religion, mostly because they don't truly understand what it is we're about.
I agree that they don't understand. I am one that I like to say I walk the right-hand path, but I also believe the current world we live in forces you to walk also the left-hand path. So it's almost a delicate balancing act between the two for those of you that follow the right-hand path. And since we're on that subject of the left-hand path and the right-hand path, can you explain what those terms mean to you?
Basically, it's yin and yang. It's a philosophical viewpoint that everything in the universe is, abundant. And where do we fit in? The reason why in some traditions the pentacle faces up versus down is the one point in the star plane upwards is all of us giving back, pointing upwards. Whereas Satanism and other left-hand paths, traditionally the star is reversed. It's a rejection of the altruistic attitude that is blind and missing the point, where the two times pointing upward is to collect the things from the universe, the gifts basically that exist that we are able to reach out and take. It is more selfish than, the ones who are pious and saying we're going to help and heal the world. Whereas Satanism says if each of us were fixed individually by our own sense of accountability, we wouldn't need to help heal the rest of the world. The rest of the world would fix themselves.
That's interesting.
It's a very severe split in the mentality. It's almost the difference between socialism versus capitalism, or something of that nature, where it's everybody needs to help everybody versus you be accountable for you, and then there's no problems to fix. So I just see it as very practical and pragmatic. If there's no problem in the first place because we all take charge of our lives, we wouldn't need the other. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be kind and charitable and helpful to those that need it. Satanists are not exclusive when it comes to being in our mindset. We do help each other. We do help with family members, but it's a matter of if you reach out too many times, if you're not doing anything for yourself when you've been given the help, then the person doing the giving feels used, cheated, abused, and that's not acceptable. And we consider them vampires, leeches, people that constantly take. You have to cut those types of individuals out of your life.
They just suck your energy from you.
Yes, whether it's physical, spiritual, your time, your money, everything you've devoted your own existence to. And I don't care if you believe in having multiple past lives or not. I look at people like that and say, it's irrelevant. Why are you wasting this one if that's what you believe?
Your beliefs are that we could believe what we want and we're all on our own path. And if these people out there, they don't get it, they're sucking from you, whether that be family, friends, or whatever, you just kind of cut them off and let them tumble and go away rather than letting them suck onto you and constantly repeating the same things. It's better just to cut people like that off.
Yeah, I mean, not to be unsensitive, but it's kind of like a parent kicking the child out of the nest. That there comes a time where people have to sink or swim on their own. If not, you'll be drained completely by, I've had family members live with me. I've had friends crash at my home. And, they bring one load of trouble after another onto themselves. And, they're lazy, they're stupid, they don't have the drive. I mean, I was homeless once. I admit it. I've been on food stamps. I've struggled. I've worked from paycheck to paycheck just like everybody else. Fast food, whatever. I've done it all. I feel I have the right to be critical of other people who aren't trying because I've gone from that to owning multiple businesses. That's why I wrote Fail Thyself. I wanted to teach people what I've learned and what tips and, techniques. To me, that's helping other people who are down, is give them the tools to know how to reshape how they think, and then they change how they look, and then that trickles down. It's the old saying of, the clothes may not make the man, but if you dress for success, it does tend to come to you more than if you go out looking for a job with, holes in your sneakers, ripped up dirty pants, and, what happened to the sense of self-respect that people used to have as a whole in society?
And being a member of the Church of Satan and a Satanist doesn't mean that you go down the black hole of debauchery and it's all about the self and you just do drugs and live in indulgence. It's just about
we are totally against the drug culture. You don't get anywhere in life by being stoned or intoxicated. We'll enjoy a drink now and then, and I've got my collection of wine to go with some good meals, because we are about indulging, but we're not about being gluttons and stupid and wasteful, because that has its own ramifications. If you're drunk, if you don't show up to work, if you're disagreeable with people because you're intoxicated, things like that, there is consequences. Other people say it's fate. I call it cause and effect. It's apples and oranges to a point, but the drugs have no place in Satanism whatsoever.
It's interesting listening to you, Corvis, that a lot of the beliefs and tenets of the Church of Satan and Satanists, and of course your own, seem to align with the Gnostics and Gnosticism and the different sects. Is there any relationship between the ancient Gnostics, like the Sethites, who existed in Egypt in the 2nd century, and the Ophites? Is there any relationship between them and the Church of Satan?
Loosely. When I wrote I, Lucifer, Exploring the Archetype and Origins of the Devil, I did a lot of digging into what attributes shaped the devil and Satanism that we know of today. I'm very big on that. In the majority of the books I've written, tracing the roots, seeing, the ancestry of things. And I did read up on the ancient times, pre-Judeo-Christianity, and, after. I did find things about, Sumeria, Zoroaster, ancient Persia, things like that. It's loosely based off of the same concept of, something powerful and not a singular deity. I mean, obviously, even the Cathars believed in a god and a devil, but they felt that Yahweh was the criminal out of the two, and all the devil did was try to give mankind knowledge and a chance. Because if you read the Old Testament, God was a very wrathful, vengeful, deity. Right up there with Jupiter, Zeus, Odin, all of those guys. To Satanists, religion in general like that is all mythology. There's no difference. They're stories that are supposed to help mankind become better human beings.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Corvis. Do you believe, I wanted to get your beliefs on, these religions, of course, were created by man who, of course, they said God was working through them. Do you believe at the time that, say, these religions were created, the Old Testament, these gods, these vengeful gods, that it seems they were always engaged in war and child sacrifice and so forth, it was for them, for those people to sort of mind control them to carry out these deeds because they were basically...
Oh, of course.
So it was almost like a type of mind control where they just became warriors and they were just killing people left and right for the name of their religion.
Well, of course. That's one of the things in history that made me question growing up Protestant when I was a kid, is I did a report for one of my classes in middle school on the Crusades. And the teacher asked me, well, what is your ending thought on the whole thing? When, the teacher at the end of your speech, you're supposed to give your answers on, to see if you actually did your homework or what your thoughts are. And I said, my thought of it is there's a 100-year war where two different religions that were very similar were slaughtering each other because they wanted to bully the world into saying who was the bigger, badder God. And that turned me off on it. If people that are so devout and supposedly compassionate and kind, and they have this false pious altruism when it's all about killing the Knights Templar because they refused to fund King Philip's war in France. That started the fall of the Templars and the Cathars and everyone else because the church wants power, the government wants power. Kings, monarchy, the Pope. It's all about control over the individual. It's not about the spirituality. It's not about the individual becoming powerful. Because if people were truly able to control their own lives, their own actions, and be accountable and apologize when they're wrong or not, cause the problem in the first place, we wouldn't need government. We wouldn't need religion to tell us how to behave in a moral, proper fashion. Common sense should tell us how to do these things.
When I look at your tenants, I go to the website. I've seen some of Magus Gilmore's interviews and some of yours. It's basically, this is the way it works. And anybody that wants to discredit your organization or they're not good people, they commit crimes or whatever, you don't want to have anything to do with them.
Of course. We kick people out if we see that they have a criminal record or they're not allowed in the first place. We try to be pretty thorough on who we allow in. Of course, some rats can slip in, between the cracks, but obviously their true colors will come out. People are people, and they can't very well divert away from who they really are. So they're going to get caught. But you're right. We do try to avoid the problem in the first place and not have to deal with it in the first place. But, I think a lot of people have the misconception that we're a church. People write to me on Facebook and say, well, where's your church at? And I'm like, well, Magus Gilmore lives in New York. Magus LaVey, during his lifetime, was in San Francisco. But, our church is within our own minds. It's how we think and perceive the world. All the Church of Satan is a learning annex of where, okay, this is the books, this is the philosophy, we're answering questions. It's up to you as individuals to utilize these ideals and make your own lives, perfect. You don't need to go to a building and hear someone preach to you to understand this is how you live your life better. You just change your mindset. We're just guides.
Can you explain who Satan is, and is there a relationship between Satan and Lucifer?
It depends on what school of thought you're coming from. The attitude and idea of who and what the various demons that were cast out, or it depends on what religion we're even talking about too. Satan and Lucifer originally were two separate demonic beings, fallen angels, and they each had their own particular attributes. Out of the 100,000 demons that various religious scholars were trying to pick apart, during the time of the Cathars all the way up until Luther, they all wanted to have their own ideas, put into the books on, the way things were, and then they would argue and bicker among themselves. But as far as I understand it, originally Satan and Lucifer were two separate entities. But as time went on, it was so much easier for controlling the masses just to tell the story of the guy with the horns, to just merge it all into one, and then anything else that was a lesser
than Jesus, or
it was just lumped into the category. Well, those are just demons. They're the devil's foot soldiers. So, I mean, we wouldn't have even had a hell if not for Milton, Dante's Inferno, things like that. Ancient religion, they had Hades and things like that. They had Hel from the Scandinavians, but it wasn't until Milton and Faust and things like that where the church jumped on it, because it was so popular with plays and sideshow, fiction, to terrorize people, that they're like, hey, this is going to keep people in line. Let's make them afraid that there's punishment, after death. And this is the place you'll go, and you'll be, tortured. And they took things like the 1400s, the Lost Judgment painting that's hanging up in, I believe it's in the Louvre, I'm not sure. And they just kept taking more and more aspects from other religions that had places of damnation and punishment. And that's what shaped our collective idea of what hell is. So before the 1400s, hell did not exist in the Christian mythos. They said that there was a place of burning and stench, and that was just I believe Gomorrah and those places that the Jews had. It was just basically Sodom and Gomorrah, things like that of the ancient cultures. Hell was on earth, really. It was giant pits that were full of trash that they would burn or just left to rot.
What I gather, what you're saying, Corvis, is you don't believe that Satan and Lucifer are these deities or these gods or these demons. It's more as far as Satan is the adversary to these dogmatic religions and Jesus and so forth. So that's why you guys have chosen Satan and the Church of Satan to represent your organization? Do you believe that's the...
Yes. We consider the devil strictly a mental construct. It's an idea. He was the biggest, boogeyman. That if the dogmatic pious religions would say, thou shalt not, don't have fun, don't do this, don't do that, we're not out killing people, just like the Ten Commandments say, thou shalt not kill. I mean, we don't do that either. But at the same time, we feel that Satan represented the idea of pride, of rebellion, of thinking on your own. Just like Prometheus bringing fire to man. We could have used Prometheus. We could have used Loki from the Nordic people. But the devil is more of a worldwide symbol that people understand is the adversary to everything else that we're against. So it just made sense for us to use Satan for the Church of Satan because of the philosophy that we have of being rebels, but with dignity. And, there were a lot of reasons why they chose that particular symbol. I mean, of course, it did cause some problems, but we say that that's stratification that weeds out the crazy people that we don't want. When they say, oh, there's a devil, let's go, let's join the Church of Satan because I want to worship him. And we're like, we're a common sense, realistic, rational organization. We don't want you crackpots.
No, that's a great way to put it. And so to clarify to the audience out there, the Church of Satan, your tenants, you don't believe in these supernatural beings and angels, demons, and these gods?
Not at all. I mean, we say that the devil is an anthropomorphic being that doesn't exist. He's completely fictional. But humanity can identify with it. They respect him, even admire him, even as a fictional character. I mean, we make our gods and goddesses of old and turn them into comic book characters in movies like Thor. I mean, you're basically emulating the Jungian psychological, analytical point of view that there's the hero, there's the villain. I mean, they're black and white, cookie-cutter, stamped-out characters that even exist, in today's fiction movies. Star Wars is a prime example of Jung's philosophy of character types and archetypes. I mean, you have good guy, you have bad guy, and then everybody else falls somewhere in between. That's the morality of choice and free will.
Do you believe the powers that be, of course, understand the psychology and they now use it to a science to rule and govern us?
I do. I think that they've had centuries of practice, but they brainwash even the followers so much that the ones who are higher up, the middle people, the reverends, the government types, they truly believe what it is they're spoon-feeding other people to some degree. But the really intelligent ones, the ones that have always been in charge, they know what's really going on. You don't say, feed the starving hungry while you ride around in a gold-laid, limousine, if you aren't laughing out of the other side of your mouth at the same time.
Yeah, that made me, of course, that made me think of Al Gore and global warming. He has 10 houses, each one about 5,000 to 6,000 square feet, and he's complaining about that. So,
right. I mean, it's all an absurd joke. If you really see through, we say, let the scales fall off of your eyes. See the reality that exists. Question everything. And people look at me, and I've had comments on my YouTube channel where people will say, oh, well, he is the devil. He's tricking you because he's telling you exactly what the devil would say. Kind of like, Milton Lord Byron era when people said, well, the devil's greatest trick is to convince the world he doesn't exist. Well, man created the devil because we needed a bad guy. We needed a scapegoat because we don't want to take personal accountability for our actions. We want to say, oh, the devil made me do it. So religion and government knows that's how the human mind works. So if you're going to get something out of them, you terrorize them, even if it's in a subtle way where you're manipulating them, saying, hey, we're here to help you. Don't do this. Bad things will happen. It's no different than a child being lectured to behave properly.
And with
I think the public is just stupid enough to go along with it, not seeing the reality of the whole situation.
Yeah, and if you look at our modern media and all the adversaries, you have the created adversaries, you have Al-Qaeda, you now have ISIS, and the good guys are in the West, and we're here to go save the people there that are being persecuted by these bad guys, and then you'll see reports that they were funded by these same good guys. So it's just this, it seems like this big game that's being played.
Oh,
and
yes.
And the whole goal, really, if you look at it, is to manage us, the people. Each nation, such as the United States, Canada, the UK, wherever you're at, they're essentially our leaders and governments ruling the people in the same fashion, but with different methods.
I mean, yeah, how many times have we seen world leaders shaking hands with each other when you find out later that one of them is funding a war that the other one is, against, that in some way they're supposedly enemies? It's because war is profitable. Peace is not. I mean, yeah, we can cry about human life lost and, things like that. And I'm not saying that we should condone terrorism, Al-Qaeda or whatever, anything like that. I mean, stop anything that ruins your own enjoyment of life, period. Because we exist, make the most out of it, enjoy yourself. So you definitely need to look at the pragmatic worldview. I am glad that I live in this country because we have more freedoms. We have more ability to accomplish. But it doesn't mean I'm about to believe everything that's handed to me from media and government.
Do you try to isolate yourself from that a lot? I mean, keep up to date on current events, but not let it control you?
Honestly, I don't even pay a whole lot of attention to current events because I have the attitude of you can't control or do anything when a president takes power. They're only going to be around for 48 years to muck up your life, and then they'll be gone and someone else will do it. If you live in fear of what other people around you are doing, you're never going to have control over your own life. You pretty much have to be, okay, I'm aware, I read the news, whatever. How is this going to affect the stock market that affects my income? Our price is going to go up or down because gas costs more. Those are the things I do pay a little attention to because it does affect my business. It affects my life when I travel. Obviously, everything affects everything else, but it's how much emphasis do you really need to put on it I don't pay much attention to a lot of news stories because honestly, that's for the mindless drones to sit there and be mesmerized by what we're being told, when I could be doing something so much more fulfilling or accomplishing. You know, I could be putting out another book. I could be doing another radio show to educate people. You know, I could be scouting out a film location for the TV show I'm working on. You know, there's so many things we can do with our lives other than just being, you know, sitting in front of the machine, whether it's the computer or television. You know, it's kind of like the Orwellian type of aspect of looking at life. You know, we're being programmed. You know, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, a tinfoil hat wearing type of guy, but
you look at it from common sense. It is what it is. Yeah. We're being programmed by media.
Yeah, so, you know, it's not even just media. I think it's advertisers, and, you know, it's like everybody remembers going to school, and there's this one kid who is always laughed at because they weren't wearing the trendy clothes. And then you look back on it, and it's like, that rebel was me. Look what I've done with my life, and all the other people are drones that are still spending a fortune trying to keep up with the Joneses.
I agree. That was me as well, Corvis. I was that punk rocker whose parents really couldn't afford clothes, and I would just deal with what I had to, and I was always the outcast, and I continue to be one to this day. But I'm one of those people like you who's creating and doing something with my life. As I had mentioned, I follow more the Gnostic path, which I see some similarities, of course, to Satanism, but I also see similarities to Christianity. And when I look at the history of Gnosticism, that was before Christianity and the Church of Satan. Yeah. So in any event,
I think we all have the same roots. I think every religion, you know, right-hand path, left-hand path, Christianity, it all goes back, you know, to some starting point, and then we splintered off of each other, and then other things splintered, other people argued. That's the way people are.
What are your thoughts on black magic and magic in general? Do Satanists or yourself practice this or believe in it?
We have ritual, and we believe in the power within our own minds. A ritual is psychodrama, and there's no such thing as black magic, white magic. It's all intent. Even other eclectic witches that I know from going to pagan events, they'll tell you the same thing. It's not like Hollywood puts it out there. It's not, ooh, this is an evil spell, this is a good one. You know, it's more of, what is your intent? What are you trying to do as an individual? It's so easy just to box things up in little compartments and then just lump one thing into it, because it's like saying, even the Luciferian Satanists that I know that copy almost all of Anton LaVey's ideals, but then they say, well, this force that's out there isn't just inward, it's, you know, a dark controlling aspect of the universe, therefore I'm going to pray, and, you know, it's the dark god. And, you know, we're laughing at that, but, you know, the idea still exists even with these people. It's, what are you trying to do? I mean, a witch that does a love spell, maybe they're just trying to find a mate, the same way that you go to OkCupid, you know. So it's very hard for me to sit there and say, you know, that everything is black and white. I don't believe in the idea of magic and ritual the way some people do. I think it's all the projection, your psychology, the mentality of putting your will and intent out there into the universe. When we do that in ritual, it's about letting go. Whether it's rage and you burn someone's name on a piece of paper, you're venting. You're just going out and smashing plates against the brick wall because you're letting out your feelings. And then, you know, after that, you can concentrate on the more enjoyable parts of your life.
To clarify what you're saying, basically, magic to you is to create or to have this intent from within. And if you do a ritual, it's to kind of make it real, to where that could maybe manifest into your life or to your surroundings. So that you mentioned a woman doing a love ritual and she wants to find a love mate. It's not essentially black magic. It's her will inside, and then she puts that on the outside into the world, and her goal is to attract that love mate. So you don't like...
They're putting it into the context that they can understand from their walk of life, from their background, from the influences that they've had. Now, I'm not dismissing people of other faiths or other ritual-type practices. If that's what works for them, if that's what gets them through life, that's fine. I just feel that we're cutting out the middleman that isn't necessary, that to me doesn't even exist. But if that's what you need to do to get you to, point A to B, and you need that little sidestep in the middle to mentally trick yourself into obtaining your goals, that's fine. Do it. Not everybody's meant to be a hard-nosed realist. I mean, the world is full of different types of people, different thinking, and we need that. We need the color. We need the dichotomy and the differences in humanity, because I think it makes the world richer. But don't try to shove it down my throat if I tell you I don't believe that such and such exists any more than the Easter Bunny.
And so when you see those rituals, Anton LaVey was big into the rituals and dressing up. It was more to put an impression on the people out there and to be more of a stage show as opposed to it being more of magic.
Yeah, it was nothing more than a carny trick. And he wanted the attention, and he made it work. Nowadays, you don't see hardly anything about ritual and shock and awe performances. Angus Gilmore kind of frowns on that now, because the other people, like the Harvard Black Mass Temple of Satan, I guess they're calling themselves, they're nothing more than a bunch of spoiled, whiny children that want attention for being blasphemous, purely for blasphemous' sake. They're not Satanists whatsoever, whereas people like us, our ritual, our daily showing people what our faith is simply by doing. What we accomplish are the monuments. And it could be anything from raising your children properly to doing 18 books like myself, or, you leave something behind. You leave an impression on the world. You make a difference. You live well, and you set yourself as a good example. To me, that's the ultimate. The immortality is not anything more than making sure people never forget you long after you're gone.
So Satanists don't believe in the afterlife or reincarnation, and immortality to you would be something similar to what the pharaohs did or to the Caesars, where they erect a statue of themselves and they make sure that the history books and that they're encoded in history.
Yes. I mean, it could be something as small as, say you created a couple albums, or someone did a movie, or, you're remembered. People always will buy something that has your name on it, or there's a building that is dedicated to you because you're a philanthropist, because you did something and gave money. That is immortality. We don't believe in reincarnation. We don't believe in an afterlife. What matters most is the life that you're living right now. What are you doing with it? It's not all about selfishness, to everything that we do. A lot of it also is, what mark are you leaving on the world? How do you want to be remembered? What kind of person were you? How did you treat other people? Because if you're a despicable human being and you think, Satanism is about being selfish, you're missing the point. Because if you're hated because of how you act, because you have this complex that you can do no wrong, you're missing the point of self-improvement and becoming the best ultimate human being that you can be, and you'll be hated. You'll leave a mark, all right, but you're no Satanist.
What is some advice you can give to those listeners out there that can relate to what you're saying, to walk down that path, to create books like you have? You mentioned you have 18 books, which is incredible. How old are you, Corvis?
I'm 43, and I got to say, doing 2 or 3 every year for the last decade, I'm starting to get in carpal tunnel. So learn how to pace yourself if you're going to pursue any passion, and go at it. Have your faith in yourself. Have your interest, and pursue what makes you happy. Find a way to utilize what you enjoy doing that you would normally consider a hobby, and find a way to make a living out of it. That way, you'll never work a day in your life, even though you put a lot into what you do. You'll be happier.
Great. And how do you support yourself right now through your work?
Yeah, I do now. The last 10 years, it's only been the last 2 that I've been self-employed through selling paintings, selling my books, getting hired to be a speaker at places. I had to work 2-3 jobs while going to college, while getting an idea, getting out of debt, finding out how to do this. Because when you first start out, of course, you can't live off 1 or 2 books. I'm not Stephen King, of any sort of level. So you have to put out quantity, but it has to be of quality. And find a mentor. Or if you can't find someone in the profession that you're enjoying, read. look things up, YouTube videos, books, the library, Kindle. You can learn how to do anything, even if you can't find a teacher. Become as good at your passion as you possibly can, and success will follow simply because you're too determined not to. I teach that a lot in my book, Hail Thyself. If people look it up on Amazon or they want to order it directly through me on darkmoonpress.com, I'd be more than happy to autograph copies that come through Dark Moon. And, I'm trying to outline everything I've learned, everything that has helped me become better, become more successful, more famous. It's how to be charming without being, a sleaze bag. It's about changing your mindset before you change anything else. It doesn't matter how pretty you dress the package up, how nice and expensive your suit is. If you're a cretin, then, that's going to unravel. I've got a lot of advice that I could offer people, but that would be self-chosen in of itself.
Definitely. And how do you write your books? You had mentioned, getting away from the computer. Do you write them on a computer, or are you writing them out with a pencil or a pen?
I do put them in Word. That way I can get spell check, and then I have several people that are editors for me now. I do a lot of the formatting. Since I'm a publisher, I could pretty much do a book start to finish in the layout and form that it needs to be by the time it goes to print, because I do that for other people, so I just start off formatting it from page one. Other people, if they want to publish something, they can get a hold of me through Facebook or through the website. I'm always looking for interesting quality content, but I'm getting away from writing more and more of my own, simply because I have so much out there already, and like I said, my wrists are starting to suffer for it, so I definitely need to slow down. I want to get into production. One of my books, Eerie America, A Travel Guide to the Macabre, is becoming a television show now. So obviously I'm going to have less time to write. And, my passion is also painting, and I do that on the weekends so that I'm not traveling.
A few more questions before we wrap up today. How does someone become a member of the Church of Satan? If they like what you're saying today and they relate with you, how do they become a member or contact the church?
First off, they need to read the Satanic Bible to have a clear, full understanding of everything LaVey stood for. The Devil's Notebook or Satan Speaks is another good one. You need to do your homework. You just don't throw your $200 at them for a lifetime membership and then wonder why you got denied. But there is links on the Church of Satan website that you can go through the process of putting in the application, and you send in a check or money order, and they're quick to send you your money back if they don't want you. I mean, they're not going to just take anybody. You pretty much have to put your money where your mouth is and do something, stand for something. And, they try to give you opportunities to, over the years anyway, they have for me, is they keep an eye on the members pretty good. If you're in the news and you're doing something and you're proactive, or you're creative and you're putting out books or CDs, or you're doing what it is you love, it's not about jockeying for position because you're trying to brown nose the higher ups. They just want to see what are you doing with your real life, and that's how you climb up.
You had mentioned they don't accept anybody with any criminal record, or does it? It's
the
type.
Yeah. If you've ever been, jailed for anything other than, traffic tickets, something like that. If you have a felony and they find out, don't even waste your $200. I mean, they won't give you your money back if you're already a member and they find out you've done something and they kick you out. But that, again, that's responsibility to the responsible. If you know you're not going to be welcome after hearing what I've had to say, then don't even try.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And in regards to your work and your books, can you let the audience know where is the best place they could find your great work?
darkmoonpress.com. They can get a hold of me through Facebook and just type in Corvis Nocturnum. I can be reached either through there or corvisnocturnum.com. You can write to me there. You can order my books. Some of those links go directly to Amazon. The majority of my work is available on Amazon.com under Corvis Nocturnum, or I'm also writing a majority of the last couple of years' works under E.R. Bernor. That's more of a publicity thing by my agent and manager telling me, well, if you're going to be on TV, you need to use your real name because you want to have a better connection to the mainstream. So, I do both.
Gotcha, and that makes perfect sense. So it was really a great pleasure speaking to you today, Corvis. You definitely dispelled a lot of myths, and I want to keep these podcasts open and educating to people out there of all religions, all faiths, and all beliefs. So I appreciate you for keeping it real and coming on the Gnostic Warrior today.
Well, thank you so much, and feel free to put the podcast link on my Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, I would love to, and I'll go ahead and put links to your website on GnosticWarrior.com. I wish you the best of luck in life and in business. Take care, Corvis.
Thank you, sir.